Welcome back to Passion World Talk Radio Network. To educate, to enlighten, to entertain. PWTRN is a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Your host, Lillian Cauldwell. Unless we forget historical, we're talking about the second part of the former presidents, former Congress and senators, and organizations that use political scams to get what they want. Because let's face it, most of these gentlemen believe, or ladies, that they're above the law and their positions of powers entitle them to get away with it, whether it's false information, fake news, or general, very broad white lies. And when you have to explain a lie to a child, make sure that they understand that a lie comes in many different forms, different shapes, and different sizes. I remember explaining to my son the difference between a white lie and a black lie. And a black lie was out and out, the person knowing that what he was saying was not truthful. But he wanted people to sympathize with him, agree with him, and get what he wanted. That was fine. A white lie is one that has bits of truth scattered in it, but they're so dominated by the bad part that it's difficult to distinguish between right and wrong. All right. So the next person we're going to discuss briefly is Bill Clinton. Jennifer Flowers, and yes, the famous or infamous Monica Lewinsky, who has taken advantage of this scam and capitalized on it. During his 1992 run for president, Clinton was pursued by rumors of extramarital affairs. In other words, he couldn't keep his zipper zipped. When those rumors hit the tabloids, with Flowers, an Arkansas state employee, alleged that she and Clinton carried on a 12-year fling. And of course, husband and wife, Bill and Hillary, denied the affair. But later, Flowers declared under oath that the affair took place. 6 years later, during a court case about another alleged Clinton affair, America learned about Monica Lewinsky and her claims of a sexual encounter with then President Clinton. At first, he denied it again. Boy, he and Peter, Apostle Peter, has some things in common, huh? They both denied their masters of a sexual nature, but he finally admitted, must have gotten to him, that he had a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. And he knew that, but he did it anyway, which makes you wonder, why? Why risk it? Questions over whether the president perjured himself led to his impeachment trial in the Senate, but he wasn't really impeached, was he? He wasn't removed from office. In the 2016 race for president, former President Donald Trump said Lewinsky episode is fair game against Hillary Clinton. Is it? If she's had an affair, I've never heard of it. But then when you want to compare apples and oranges and make your fruit salad, it doesn't really matter, right? A scam is a scam. However, that's another topic. Then we have the Iran-Contra affair. The journey to free American hostages in Lebanon took place during the Reagan administration, and it nearly ended former President Reagan's second term of president. The U.S. enlisted the help of Iran by selling them arms, then used the monies for money laundering and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Eventually, the court threw out in Texas delays conviction. But the fact was, it happened. And you wonder why. Our government has always put itself head and shoulders above all the other governments in the world, saying that we're the best governments, that democracy is the best form of government. Really? When it exposes itself, like Watergate or the Iran-Contra affair, that we're just as corrupt and evil as anybody else. And then you have, quote, the Keating, unquote, five. The Senate investigated these 5 U.S. senators in the late 1980s and early 1990s for improperly interfering in the investigations of a savings and loan company. The 5 senators, of whom John McCain is the only one, then still serving, asked the federal agency not to pursue charges against Lincoln Savings and Loan Association for engaging heavily in risky investments. Are banks liable to be held accountable for investing their customers' money in a risky venture and then they lose it? Shouldn't they then be made to pay them back? To me, it's a Ponzi scheme. Come on. Lincoln, the bank, later collapsed. Charles Keating contributed to each one of these senators' campaigns. Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? One hand feeds the other. And the bank collapsed, and it was the taxpayers, you and I, folks, who paid over $3 billion. While all 5 senators denied any misconduct, they faced a 2-year investigation. Only one received a reprimand from the Senate. And one, John McCain, went on to run to become president. 2008, guess what was brought up? Then we have Jim Traficant, the colorful congressman from Ohio, had served 17 years before he was thrown out of office by the House of Representatives in July 2002. A few months earlier, he had been convicted of bribery, racketeering, and corruption. Quote, it was the second time since the Civil War and 5th time in its 213-year history that the House chose to impose the ultimate penalty for an unethical conduct and strip a member of office, unquote, the New York Times reported. Traficant was famous for using, quote, Star Trek, unquote, references during his floor speeches such as beam me up. Yes, well, he served 7 years in prison for being beamed up, and he died in 2014. And then we have the infamous Spiro Agnew, who was Richard Nixon's first vice president, and he became the second in American history to resign after accusations of tax evasion and bribery. So they wanted to know whether or not why he did it. And then following Spiro Agnew's conviction, when he resigned, Louis Scooter Libby, Vice President Dick Cheney's former chief of staff, was convicted of lying to the FBI, perjury, and obstructing the investigation into the leak. And he was reprieved by President George W. Bush, who commuted Libby's prison sentence to 30 months. Then we have the infamous DC Madam, an escort service run by Deborah Jean Pelfrey, created to high-profile customers throughout the nation's capital, including Senator David Vitter, a Republican from Louisiana. A jury in federal court convicted Pelfrey, known as the DC Madam, in 2008 for running a prostitution service. Vitter apologized constantly, calling the incident, quote, a very serious sin in my past, for which I am, of course, completely responsible. But guess what? In 2015, the issue turned up again during his failed 2015 run for governor. And meanwhile, the lawyer who represents Pelfrey is attempting to get her escort service records unsealed, claiming that they may contain information relevant to the upcoming presidential election. And some of this information has been released. Makes you wonder. These people, they take oaths to serve us, the American citizens, to the best of their ability, which doesn't include laundering, embezzlement, lying knowingly. These people are supposed to be better than we are, or at least that's what they make us think. But human nature is human nature, and sometimes the temptations are too strong. And then we have the House Post Office and banking scandals to end. Hundreds of congressmen and members of President George H.W. Bush's cabinet face scrutiny when it was discovered that the House Bank allowed members of Congress to overdraft on their bank accounts without facing a penalty. Can you imagine us overdrafting on Social Security? And they've been screaming for years that Social Security is running out of money. Why can't they say that the House Bank institution is running out of money? Meanwhile, while that was taking place, another scandal or scam was happening over at the House Post Office, where members of Congress and office employees allegedly engaged in embezzlement and misuse of public funds. Why is it they always pick on the public or on Social Security recipients? Why don't they embezzle it from their other wealthy people? That was not the idea when the democracy was formed back in 1776, that these people would live at the expense of its citizens. We might as well have a king, queen, and a court full of noblemen. Really? The scandal effectively ended the career of Rep. Dan Rostengowski, chairman of the Powerful Ways and Means Committee. Oh yeah, he figured out Ways and Means, didn't he? He eventually served prison time for his role in the House Post Office scandal. But in 2000, President Clinton pardoned him. Isn't that nice? Too bad ordinary people aren't pardoned either. There are very few and far between. Right before they died, they're allowed to be pardoned. So that sums it up for right now about political scams that has taken place in our recent history. Does make you wonder what we haven't learned yet. That scam doesn't pay, but it does. Trillions of dollars to people overseas who've gotten quite sophisticated with the use of AI. And they're all types. And we will continue talking about scams in a generalized manner and hoping to provide you with the red flags you need to be aware of. And of course, there's my new program, Scam Damnation, where I have personally been scammed twice, didn't see the red signals a second time, and now I'm telling my story on a podcast, hopefully with information and other additional red flags that will help you. Because obviously, sometimes you need to be hit in the head a couple of times before it finally sinks in that if it's too good to be true, it usually is. Thank you very much for listening. Reminder, the Podcasting Obstacle Training Certified course will be taking place. Webinars on June 11th, Tuesday, and Thursday, June 13th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Add or subtract your hours depending where you live, especially Hawaii and Alaska. The webinar deals with 3 topics from the training course: the 7 C's of communication, the art of the interview, being interviewed, and you interviewing a guest, and mastering your people skills. Very important. If you don't like yourself, nobody else is going to like what you have to say either. Go over to education.passionateworldtalkradio.com/masterclass and sign up. June will be here sooner than you think. In fact, next Friday is the 31st of May. Where did the first 5 months go to, ladies and gentlemen? It zoomed by. And then, of course, if you're really interested, sign up for the Podcasting Obstacle Training course. Again, over at education.passionateworldtalkradio.com masterclass and sign up. It's a 2-month process, 45-minute class. First 20 minutes, I provide the information. The remainder is open to questions and answers, and for you to physically stand up and put together what you've just learned, and then go home and keep on practicing. The course is 5 days a week, 2 months. You receive a certificate of completion, plus an opportunity to air the 3 completed podcasts you created during the course, plus a 3-month internship, plus if you're interested in becoming a passionate host at Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in June.